Have you ever carried something small from a dead person's room and felt, for 1 second, that it was heavier than your whole life? What would you do if that small thing turned out to be the only witness your family forgot to kill? And before this story pulls you in any deeper, do me one favor. If you love stories that start quiet and hit hard, tap like, subscribe, and share this with one person who always says, "That would never happen in real life." My name is Arthur Bell. I am 71 years old, a retired rail safety investigator, a father, a widower, and until 5 months after my wife died, I was also a fool. I do not say that to be dramatic. I say it because I spent 40 years studying accidents. I was trained to notice what others missed: a loose bolt, a stress crack, a bad report signed too quickly. I built my whole career on one simple belief: disaster almost never comes out of nowhere. There is always a warning. There is always a sign. There is always one small thing that does not fit. And still, when my wife Evelyn died, I saw nothing. The doctors called it sudden cardiac failure. Quick, severe, unpredictable. That was the word they used. Unpredictable. My son Michael repeated it so many times that it became the soundtrack of that week. "It happened so fast, Dad. There was nothing anyone could do, Dad. Please don't blame yourself, Dad." I believed him because I needed to believe something. Evelyn and I had been married for 46 years. She was the calm in our house, the kind of woman who never raised her voice but somehow made everyone lower theirs. She had a habit of touching your sleeve when she wanted your full attention. That small touch could stop an argument, settle a child, soften a hard mood. She made our home feel lit even on gray days. In the last year of her life, little things began slipping from her. A name here, a grocery list there, the route back from the florist she had visited for 20 years. It frightened her more than she admitted. She laughed it off around other people, but at night when we were alone, she would sit on the edge of the bed and say, "Art, promise me I won't become a burden." I always told her the truth. "You could never be a burden to me." A few weeks later, I bought her a pair of smart glasses. They looked elegant. Thin gold frame, soft brown arms, light enough that she forgot she was wearing them. The camera feature was there mostly as a safety tool. It could record routes, reminders, little voice notes, and it backed up to a private cloud. I told her it was just another pair of eyes when hers got tired. She smiled and said I was always trying to solve life with equipment. The night she died, those glasses came back to me in a plastic hospital bag with her wedding ring, her watch, and a tube of coral lipstick she had no business carrying because she almost never wore lipstick. One lens was cracked. I could not touch that bag for months. Grief is a strange thing. People think it looks like crying. Sometimes it does, but most of the time it looks like avoiding a drawer. It looks like standing in a hallway for 10 full minutes because your hand landed on a coat that still smells like the person you lost. It looks like leaving dishes in the sink because she used to hum while washing them, and silence feels worse than mess. 5 months passed like that. Michael visited more often. His wife Jenna came with casseroles and soft eyes and careful concern. They told me I should not be alone. They said I was forgetting things. They said my hands shook more. They said grief does that to a man. I believed some of it because I was tired. I was sleeping badly. My joints hurt. Some mornings I woke with a fog in my head so thick I had to stand still and remember what day it was. I thought that was morning. Then one Tuesday afternoon, I opened the closet shelf where the hospital bag sat. I took out Evelyn's glasses. The cracked lens caught the light. I told myself I was finally ready to repair them and put them away properly, maybe in the drawer beside her letters. That simple errand nearly got me killed. The repair shop was on the east side, tucked between a key cutter and an old bookstore that smelled like dust and rain. The shop belonged to Noah Reyes, a young technician I had known since he was 15. His mother used to work with Evelyn at the library. Smart kid, quiet, good hands, the kind of person who takes things apart gently because he respects what they used to be. When I stepped inside, he looked up from a circuit board and smiled. "Mr. Bell," he said, "it's been a while." I placed the glasses on the counter and told him I only wanted the lens replaced. Then I added, almost as an afterthought, "If there's anything saved in them, just wipe it. I'm not looking to keep old files." He picked them up, turned them once in his fingers, and then everything in his face changed. It was not confusion. It was not surprise. It was fear. His eyes flicked from the glasses to me, then to the front window. He moved so quickly that I barely had time to register it. He walked to the door, flipped the sign to closed, pulled the blind down, and locked the deadbolt. My first stupid thought was that the neighborhood must have been getting worse. "Noah," I said, "what on earth are you doing?" He did not answer right away. He swallowed, came around the counter, and said in a voice so low I almost missed it, "Come to the back, please, right now." I followed him through a narrow hallway into the workshop. The room was dim except for 3 monitors and a bench light. He set the glasses down like they were explosive. Then he looked straight at me and whispered, "Mr. Bell, check your wife's will before anyone knows you know anything." I stared at him. "What?" His next words hit even harder. "Because if I'm right," he said, "you are not in danger someday. You're in danger now." Every part of me went cold. Not afraid. Not yet. Just cold. The kind of cold that shows up when your body understands a threat before your mind is ready to. I asked him what he meant. He told me that 3 weeks after Evelyn died, he had noticed failed remote logins connected to her glasses account. Then a wipe request. Then another. Someone had tried to erase both the local storage and the cloud backup. If the device had been normal, it would have worked. "But this model caches fragments," he said. "It stores hidden recovery packets when a file gets interrupted." He hesitated before saying the next part. "I didn't call you because I wasn't sure." And then a woman came in asking about this exact serial number. She said she was helping a grieving family settle personal property. "Jenna," I said before I could stop myself. Noah nodded once. "She acted casual," he said. "Too casual. I told her I'd never seen the device before. That same night, someone tried to access the backup again." I felt my heartbeat pick up. "What did you recover?" He turned to the monitor, connected the glasses, typed for a moment, and brought up a damaged file. Grainy, broken, stuttering. He looked back at me like he was asking for permission to ruin my life. Then he pressed play. The camera opened in my kitchen. I knew it instantly from the angle. Evelyn was standing near the island. I could hear the tiny clink of a glass being set down. Then her breathing changed. Sharp, uneven, wrong. The view tilted. The glass fell. The floor rushed up. My wife hit the tile. Even now, telling you this, I can hear that sound. Not the glass, her body. The image fractured where the lens had cracked, but I could still see enough. Her hand moved into frame, reaching weakly toward the counter. Her voice came thin and broken. "My tablets," she whispered, "please." A pair of shoes stepped into view. Men's loafers, dark brown leather. I had bought those shoes for Michael on his 35th birthday. Then another pair, cream heels. Jenna. Neither of them knelt to help her. Neither of them called emergency services. Evelyn's hand lifted again, trembling toward the counter. Jenna reached down, picked up the orange pill bottle, and for one horrible second I thought maybe I was wrong, maybe help had simply come too slowly. Then Jenna moved the bottle out of reach. The audio cut in and out. Static swallowed the room. The picture froze, jerked, returned. Michael's face came near the lens for half a second. Calm, too calm. His lips moved, but the sound broke apart before the words became clear. Then the screen went black. Noah killed the playback. The silence in that room did not feel empty. It felt crowded. Crowded with everything I was refusing to understand. My wife had not died alone. My son had stood over her while she begged for help, and someone had tried very hard to erase the proof. My phone rang. I flinched so hard I nearly knocked over the chair. Michael. I looked at his name on the screen and felt something inside me change shape. Not break, change. Grief had made me soft in the wrong places. This did something else. It hardened me. I answered. Dad, he said warmly, Jenna and I are on our way over. We need to take you to meet a lawyer this afternoon. It's just paperwork, temporary financial authority while you recover. You've seemed confused lately, and I don't want anything falling through the cracks. He did not ask if I was free. He did not ask if I was well enough to go. He told me they were already coming. I looked at Noah. He looked terrified for me. How long? I asked into the phone. 20 minutes, Michael said. And Dad, don't wander off. Last week you forgot where you parked at church. He hung up before I could answer. I had not forgotten where I parked at church. I had not even gone to church last week. That was the first clean crack in the story they had been building around me. If you can already feel where this is heading, hit the like button now, because the truth in this story doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives in pieces, and every piece cuts deeper than the last. For a few seconds I did nothing. I simply sat there, staring at the dead black screen where Evelyn's final moments had ended. A sane man would have called the police. A grieving man might have collapsed. I did neither. Years of accident work had trained me in one thing above all. When a disaster is still unfolding, panic is a luxury. You secure the scene first. Noah, I said, and even to me my voice sounded different. Copy everything. One drive stays with you. One goes somewhere no one can find. If anyone asks, you never saw me today. He nodded immediately. Then I asked the question that mattered most. Can you recover the missing audio? I think so, he said. Not fast, but probably. Do it. I left through the back door, drove home, and used the rear entrance like I was entering my own house for the first time. I had 18 minutes. I went straight to the kitchen and stood where Evelyn had fallen. Strange what a room can hold. On the surface, everything looked ordinary, clean counter, fruit bowl, kettle. But once a place has been touched by betrayal, normal objects stop feeling normal. The sink looked like a stage prop. The tiles felt hostile. I opened the drawer where we kept medicine. Her heart tablets were gone. Of course they were. I forced myself upstairs and looked at my reflection in the bedroom mirror. For months, I had actually been moving slower, speaking softer, losing track in conversation. If Michael and Jenna had been building a picture of me as a declining old man, then the safest thing I could do was give them more of the same. So I slumped my shoulders, loosened my jaw, practiced a vague, tired look. By the time the bell rang, I looked exactly like the man they thought they were killing. Jenna came in first, carrying concern on her face like it had been professionally applied. Michael followed with a leather folder tucked under his arm. Dad, he said, giving me a hug that lasted one beat too short, you shouldn't have gone out alone. I just took your mother's glasses for repair, I said quietly. The words did something to Jenna, not much, just a flicker, but I saw it. Michael covered smoothly. You should have called me. We would have handled it. Handled it. That word sat between us like poison. They got me into the car with patient smiles and those careful tones adults use with elderly strangers in waiting rooms. On the drive, Michael spoke about bank deadlines, insurance confusion, tax exposure, probate timing. He used complicated words the way a magician uses a scarf, to distract, to fill space, to keep you from noticing the real move. I let him talk. Then Jenna unscrewed a silver bottle and passed back a travel cup. Herbal tea, she said. You've been so tense lately. The smell hit me first. Chamomile, honey, something bitter underneath. I raised it halfway, pretended my hand shook, and spilled a little on the rubber mat by my shoe. Jenna turned quickly. "Oh no, let me." "It's fine," I said. Michael barely looked back. He was too busy watching traffic, and I realized, watching me through the mirror. The tea sat in the cup holder for the rest of the drive. By the time we parked, the edge of a paper receipt lying beneath it had browned and curled. I noticed. I said nothing. The lawyer's office was wrong. That was clear the moment we stepped inside. Not our family attorney's building. Not the clean old office downtown where Evelyn and I had signed our trust years ago. This was a narrow suite above a payday lender and a nail salon. Cheap desk, cheap carpet, cheap smile on the man who introduced himself as Mr. Dillard. Michael had not brought me to a lawyer I knew. He had brought me to a man who expected me not to read. The documents on the desk were thick. I asked for my glasses. Michael said, "I'll explain everything." I told him no. Evelyn had always told me never to sign what I could not see. That part was true. I let my breathing turn rough, coughed twice, pressed a hand to my chest. The old man act came easier than I wanted it to. Maybe because I had been feeling weak for real. Maybe because some part of me still was. Mr. Dillard tried to guide me with a pen. "It's only temporary authority, standard protection. Your son will manage accounts, property, and health decisions." Health decisions. There it was. The room tilted, not from illness but from understanding. If I signed, Michael would not need to hide behind suggestions anymore. He would own the machinery of my life. So I did the one thing greed never prepares for. I slowed everything down. "I'll take these home," I said. Michael's smile vanished for less than a second, then came back thinner. "Dad, this really should be done today." "Then it really should wait," I said. Jenna stepped in fast, softening the moment. "Of course, he's overwhelmed." The control nearly slipped right there, and if I had missed that look in Michael's eyes, I might never have believed how close I already was to dying. He was not irritated because of paperwork. He was angry because the timeline mattered. They drove me home in brittle silence. At the door, Jenna touched my arm and said she would stay the night, just until you're steadier. Steadier. That evening she cooked soup, brought crackers, and watched every bite I took. Michael left around 9 but promised to return the next morning. Before bed, Jenna came into my study carrying a tray with another mug and a single white capsule in a folded tissue. "New supplement," she said gently. Michael spoke to a doctor friend. No imprint on the pill, no bottle, no label. I smiled like a tired man too worn down to question kindness. I put the capsule in my mouth, took a sip of water, and let my tongue hold it against my cheek. After she left, I spat the capsule into my hand, wrapped it in the tissue, and slipped it into my pocket. The tea was harder. She had left the door slightly open, listening. I waited, counted slowly. Then I coughed hard, kicked my wastebasket, and used the noise to pour the liquid into the base of a potted fern beside the desk. I slept little that night, not because I was afraid of what might happen, because I knew what already had. At 6 in the morning, I went downstairs. The fern was dead. Not drooping, dead. Its leaves were curled and dark, and the soil had taken on a yellow-gray crust in places where the tea had soaked in. I stood over that plant with the coldest feeling I have ever known. For months, I had thought my weakness belonged to grief. It belonged to them. My aching joints, my morning confusion, the heaviness in my muscles, the strange sleepiness after Jenna's visits, the way Michael kept gently telling other people I was not quite myself. It had all been part of the same job. They had done this to Evelyn first. Now they were doing it to me. If this story is making your stomach tighten, subscribe right now, because some betrayals don't begin with knives or shouting. They begin with tea, paperwork, and a smile. I did not confront Jenna. I thanked her for staying. I told her the tea had helped. And when Michael arrived later that morning, I made sure to move slowly enough to reassure him. He looked pleased. That look carried me through the next few hours. The moment they left for an errand, I started building my own case. The capsule went into a sealed envelope. I cut out a patch of the poisoned soil and snapped off 2 blackened leaves from the fern. Then I called someone I had not spoken to in nearly a year, Dr. Helen Voss. Helen and I were not close friends, but over the years our work crossed more than once. She was a toxicologist at a private medical lab, sharp and exact, one of those people who could look at a result and hear the lie hiding behind it. I told her I needed discretion and a rush analysis. I did not explain everything on the phone. She only said, "Bring it yourself." The lab was clean, white, quiet, and expensive. The kind of place wealthy firms used when they needed answers before lawsuits. Helen met me in her office, took one long look at my face, and skipped small talk. "What am I testing?" "Something my daughter-in-law gave me to swallow," I said, "and something she gave my plant to die from." She did not smile. 3 hours later, she returned with a preliminary report and a harder face than before. "The capsule contains a strong sedative compound," she said. "Not something a doctor hands out in a tissue. It would cause confusion, weakness, slowed reflexes, and heavy sleep, especially in an older adult." "And the soil?" She set the pages down in front of me. "Thallium traces," she said. "Enough to kill plant tissue fast in concentrated form. In people, repeated exposure can mimic all kinds of decline before it becomes catastrophic." I sat very still. "Symptoms: pain, fatigue, cognitive fog, nerve issues, heart trouble. It depends on dose and duration." Duration. That was the word that broke me more than death had. Because Evelyn had not only died, she had been dying while living beside me, and I had been calling it stress, aging, maybe early dementia. I had stood in the same house, watched the same pain in her face, and failed to see that someone had been poisoning my wife under my own roof. Helen asked if I wanted authorities contacted immediately. I told her not yet. She looked disgusted with me for about 2 seconds until I said, "They have spent months making me look incompetent. If I move too early, they say I'm confused. I need something they cannot talk around." She thought about that and then nodded. "Get a blood test today," she said. "And Arthur, don't eat or drink anything from them again." I did the blood test on the spot. From there I drove to the office of Eli Mercer, the attorney who had handled Evelyn's father's trust, then ours. He was older than me by 3 years, mean in the useful way and loyal in the expensive way. He had buried 2 wives and half his softness, but not his brain. I told his assistant it was an emergency. He made room immediately. When I laid out the lab report, the pill, the poison plant sample, and Noah's description of the erased recording attempts, Eli did not interrupt once. He only listened, asked clean questions, and wrote very little down because men like him remember what matters. Then I asked him for Evelyn's latest will and trust papers. He left the room. When he came back, he was carrying 2 folders. The first was the original estate plan Evelyn and I had signed together 3 years earlier. Simple in spirit even if not in legal language. The surviving spouse kept full control. After both of us were gone, a large portion would go to Michael, yes, but nearly half would go to a heart care foundation Evelyn had wanted to support because her own mother died young. The second folder held a codicil, filed 6 weeks before Evelyn's death. I had signed it. Or rather, my signature was there. At first I did not understand what I was looking at. The page swam in front of me. Then Eli pointed to the amended clause. If both spouses died within 6 months of one another, charitable distributions would be suspended, and the entire estate would pass directly to the son, Michael Bell, as sole beneficiary. I looked up slowly. That was never there before. No, Eli said, it was not. Then how is it here? He tapped the signature line. The signature is yours, he said, or a very good imitation of yours. I thought back. 6 weeks before Evelyn died, I had been sick with a chest infection. Jenna had come by often. Michael had brought stacks of insurance forms. I had signed 2 or 3 pages one afternoon while feverish and tired, trusting my son to tell me what they were. Eli did not say the word forgery. He did not need to. Can this be contested? Yes, he said, but not with speed and not if they get legal control of you first. That was the second time. That day my grief turned into math. They were not only poisoning me. They were racing a calendar. If I died before the 6-month mark, the charity clause died with me. Michael got everything. If I signed power of attorney first, he could strip accounts, sell assets, control treatment, and isolate me while the poison finished the job. Eli leaned back in his chair. Do you want justice, he asked, or do you want survival first? Both. Then we proceed in that order. He told me something else his investigator had recently heard through financial circles. Michael's real estate venture had collapsed, quietly. He was carrying private debt he had hidden from almost everyone, including, it seemed me, large debt, urgent debt, enough to explain desperation. Motive. That mattered. Over the next hour we made a plan built on one truth. People who poison slowly believe 2 things. First, that their victim is too weak to act. Second, that more time means more control. We would use both. Eli arranged for a handwriting specialist to review the codicil. He also contacted a financial compliance officer at a bank we had used for years. If Michael could be induced to move money under limited authority into any personal or shell structure, it could create a second lane of exposure alongside attempted murder and fraud. I listened, agreed, and then asked the hardest question. What if Noah recovers the rest of the recording? Eli's eyes stayed on mine. Then your son is finished. I went home by dusk. Jenna was in my kitchen making chicken broth like she owned the room. She looked relieved when I walked in. Too relieved. As if she had been afraid I might not return, but not for the reasons a loving daughter-in-law would fear. Where were you? She asked. I lifted a paper pharmacy bag Eli had given me for cover. Forgot my vitamins. She laughed lightly and told me she worried when I drove alone. That night I poured every drink she handed me into hidden places. The next morning I heard Michael and Jenna talking in the breakfast room while they thought I was still upstairs. Her voice came first. He's resisting more than I thought. Michael answered in a low hiss, then stopped babying him. You think I'm babying him? I'm the one getting him to take anything. Not enough, he snapped. The deadline is in 11 days. I froze on the staircase. Deadline. Not metaphor, not vague urgency, a date. Jenna lowered her voice. He's weaker, just not weak enough. Michael's answer came back like ice, then increase it. That moment matters to me even now, not because it proved what I already knew, because hearing your child discuss your death like a scheduling problem does something words barely touch. Love does not vanish in a clean line. It tears. One piece still remembers a boy with scraped knees and missing front teeth. Another piece sees a man deciding how much poison is enough. Those 2 truths cannot live together for long. I went back upstairs, waited 2 minutes, then came down making noise, blinking as though just awake. They turned toward me with smiles. It is terrible how quickly evil can become polite again. If you've ever stayed quiet just long enough to see someone reveal themselves, tap-like. Silence is not weakness when it's gathering proof. From that point on, every hour mattered. Noah called me that afternoon from an unknown number. He kept his voice low and said he had recovered more of the audio, not all, but enough to understand the final words clearly. I met him in a grocery store parking lot because I no longer trusted any place connected to my routines. He handed me an encrypted drive, no larger than a thumb, and a printed transcript. I read it sitting in my car. The file began with Evelyn gasping for her tablets. Static followed. Then Jenna's voice, sharp and cold in a way I had never heard in my home, "Leave them." Next came Michael. "No ambulance yet." Evelyn again, weaker this time. "Michael, please." Then his answer. "I'm sorry, Mom. We can't wait anymore. Dad won't fight the papers after this." I read that line 3 times. Not because I failed to understand it. Because some lies are so large that the truth feels absurd, even written in black and white. Noah also told me someone had circled the block outside his shop twice the night before. He was scared. I did not blame him. Eli moved him into a temporary apartment that same evening. Meanwhile, my blood test came back. Elevated exposure markers, early enough to treat, clear enough to support the poisoning pattern. Helen arranged a specialist consult under another name and started me on treatment. By then the path ahead was narrow but visible. Step 1, keep acting weak. Step 2, protect the money. Step 3, get Michael to make a move no lawyer could smooth over. Step 4, expose the murder with every wall of denial already broken. Eli set the bait 2 days later. Through formal channels, he sent Michael a message that I was reconsidering my refusal to delegate finances because I felt overwhelmed. Not full power of attorney, just limited temporary trading authority over a newly isolated reserve account to simplify urgent estate pressures. The amount in that account was large enough to tempt him and structured in a way that any improper transfer would create an instant compliance review. $5 million. Real money, real account, real trap. Michael arrived at my house that night in under 15 minutes. He did not bring Jenna. That told me more than his words did. He found me in the den with a blanket over my knees and the lamps dimmed. I let my hands shake a little. He crouched beside me with practiced concern. "You don't have to handle this alone, Dad." I looked at him for a long moment, at the lines beside his mouth, at the face Evelyn once called kind, at the son I had loved without question. Then I gave him exactly what he wanted, but only in part. "I can't manage all of it," I said. "Not right now. Eli set up a smaller account just until I feel clearer. You can help with that first." He tried not to look too eager, failed. I handed him the limited authority papers. Legitimate, narrow, signed by me in full awareness and countersigned properly. The account was tagged, watched, and restricted. He scanned only enough to comfort himself. "Dad," he said softly, "this is smart." No, it was smarter than he knew. He signed before leaving. Not greedily, not obviously, but with the smooth speed of a man who had already imagined spending it. Within 24 hours, he moved to transfer most of it through a chain of entities tied to debt coverage. The bank froze the transfer and logged everything. Eli smiled for the first time in days when he called me with the news. "Now," he said, "if he says he was protecting you, we ask why protection needed shell companies." That was one net. The murder recording was the other. Then came the choice. I could have moved quietly after that. Police, charges, arrest at home, closed doors, but I knew what men like Michael survive on: reputation, posture, the illusion that decent people will keep their shame private for them. He was planning a charity dinner that Saturday night. Public, expensive, full of donors, clients, board members, and the same soft-faced people who called him generous because he knew how to stand near a podium. The event was nominally in honor of Evelyn's memory. That detail still makes me sick. He planned to use my wife's death as polishing cloth for his image. I decided he would choke on it instead. Eli pushed back at first. Public exposure added risk, chaos, emotion. But once Noah confirmed the recovered clip was stable enough for projection, and once the bank compliance team confirmed law enforcement would be present nearby because of the financial transfer attempt, the plan shifted from impossible to brutal. I told Eli I did not want Michael shot, chased, or cornered in some parking garage. I wanted him to stand under bright lights, tell the world what a loving son he was, and then lose every mask at once. Eli studied me a long time before saying, "You sound calm." "I am calm." That was true, maybe the calmest I had been since Evelyn died. Not because I felt nothing, because I finally knew where to place it all. If you're still with me, share this story with someone who needs a reminder that the quiet people in a room are not always the weak ones. Sometimes they are the ones counting every exit. The day before the dinner, I sat alone in Evelyn's closet and held one of her scarves to my face, not for comfort, for memory. I wanted to remember her before all of this, before evidence, before poison, before transcripts and strategy and blood panels. I wanted to remember the real woman, not only the victim. She loved apricots more than any grown adult should. She cut the crust off toast when she was anxious. She left notes inside books she wanted me to read, little slips that said things like, "Page 41. This sounds like you pretending to be reasonable." She never liked fancy parties because she said everyone in them looked tired of pretending to be pleased. When I thought about what Michael had done, the worst part was not only her death. It was that he had turned her last days into a business calculation. He had taken the gentlest person in our family and treated her body like a gate he needed opened. I cried then, harder than I had cried at the funeral. Not because I was broken again. Because I was almost done being broken. That evening, Helen visited the house under the excuse of checking on a medication reaction. Michael was there. So was Jenna. Helen examined me in the study and later, while they listened from the hall, told me in a loud professional voice that stress and age could cause disorientation and fatigue. Michael looked relieved. Jenna looked triumphant. Once they stepped away, Helen squeezed my hand and whispered, "Levels are dropping. Keep surviving." The next morning, Noah and Eli met me at a hotel service entrance 3 blocks from the charity venue. Noah would work with the audiovisual team using a prepared tribute file swap. Eli had coordinated discreetly with detectives and financial investigators already tied to the frozen transfer. If Michael tried to flee after the video, he would not get far. I spent that afternoon getting ready slowly. There is something almost holy about dressing for a final confrontation when the person you once loved expects you to arrive half dead. I shaved carefully, put on the dark suit Evelyn liked most, the one she said made me look less like a man who reads train reports for pleasure. I stood in front of the mirror and straightened fully for the first time in months. My body still felt the aftereffects of the poisoning. I was not suddenly young, but I was no one's patient anymore. When I walked downstairs, Jenna was in the foyer fixing an earring. She turned and actually startled. "Arthur," she said, "you look well." I smiled. Funny what a clear head can do. She did not like that sentence. I saw it land. At the venue, Michael met us near the ballroom entrance. He was in a blue suit, polished and handsome, performing success like a religion. For half a second his eyes searched my face too hard. He knew something had shifted, but not what. Then he smiled and kissed my cheek. That was the last time he touched me as my son. Inside, the ballroom gleamed. Candlelight, white flowers, screens on either side of the stage, a string trio playing soft background music no one was truly listening to. The room was full of people who liked the feeling of generosity more than the practice of it. Michael moved through them beautifully. That had always been his gift. He could make attention feel like warmth. He could speak to rich men as if he admired them and to grieving women as if he understood them. He had none of Evelyn's quiet honesty, but he had charm. And charm, in the wrong hands, is one of the sharpest tools in the world. He introduced Jenna to donors. He clasped shoulders. He lowered his voice at the right moments. He let people say how brave he had been after losing his mother and caring for his aging father. I sat at the front table and let them think I belonged there as a prop. The closer the night moved toward the speech, the calmer I got. Fear had already spent itself. All that was left was direction. At 8:40, Noah texted Eli a single word: ready. At 8:52, a detective I had never formally met took a seat near the back, pretending to review event paperwork. Two more appeared separately within minutes. The bank investigator arrived as a donor guest. At 9 o'clock, Michael stepped to the podium. He thanked everyone for coming. He thanked the board. He thanked the sponsors. He spoke of resilience, family, community, legacy. Then he spoke of Evelyn. People leaned in. He described her as warm, wise, selfless. All true. Then he described himself as a son trying to honor her memory. Not true at all. He even mentioned caring for me through my difficult decline, and I heard small sounds of sympathy around the room. Jenna lowered her eyes at exactly the right moment. It would have been a perfect performance if he had not murdered the woman in the story. Then he announced a short memorial tribute video. He stepped aside. The lights dimmed. My heart did not race, it slowed. On the screen appeared a still photo of Evelyn smiling on our porch. Soft music. 2 seconds of expected comfort. Then the image glitched. The music cut out. The screen snapped to the view from her glasses. My kitchen. A few guests laughed nervously, thinking it was a technical mistake. Then Evelyn gasped. The room went still. The glass shattered. She fell. Every sound from the recovered file hit the room raw and ugly. Her breath, her plea, the scrape against tile, Jenna stepping into frame, the orange pill bottle lifted and withheld, Michael's shoes, his face near the lens. And then, this time with the restored audio clear enough to scar the walls themselves, his words. I'm sorry, Mom. We can't wait anymore. Dad won't fight the papers after this. If that line chilled you, hit subscribe now. Stories matter because they remind us evil rarely looks evil until the mask slips. The clip ended on silence. No music returned. No one moved. There is a kind of silence that belongs to awe. This was not that. This was moral shock. Hundreds of people arriving at the same truth at the same time. Jenna stood first. No, she said too loudly. No, that's edited. Michael did not speak right away. He just stared at the blank screen like a man whose reflection had betrayed him. Then the room came back to life all at once. Murmurs, chairs, one woman at the next table covering her mouth, someone saying, "Oh my God." Another voice, "Did you hear what he said?" Michael lunged for the podium mic. It's fake, he said. This is manipulated. My father is sick. He's been confused for months. That line might have worked in private. It died in public. Because by then, Eli was already on his feet. He did not rush. He walked to the stage with the patience of a man arriving to finish paperwork. He took the secondary microphone and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Eli Mercer. I am legal counsel for Arthur Bell. The footage you just saw has been authenticated from the device cache and recovery cloud connected to Evelyn Bell's glasses. It is not the only evidence." He held up a folder. This includes toxicology reports tied to repeated poisoning attempts against Arthur Bell and documentation of a fraudulent attempt to alter and benefit from estate control before a 6-month survivorship threshold. That room had been built for fundraising. It had never been built to hold that much shame. Michael started toward me then, not the stage, me. "Dad," he said sharply, coming fast now, "what are you doing?" What was I doing? I rose from my chair. It is hard to explain how small he looked in that moment. though he was still my son and still a tall man. Maybe because I was finally seeing him without memory protecting him, without fatherhood softening the edges. I took the microphone from Eli. My voice when it came was steady. "What am I doing?" I repeated. "I am finishing what your mother could not." Michael's face changed, not to guilt, to fear. He took one more step toward me. A detective moved in from the side, another from behind. Michael saw them too late. Jenna broke first. "It was him," she cried. "He said we had no choice. He said the trust would save us." Michael turned on her with pure hatred. "Shut up." That was the moment the room fully understood there would be no graceful explanation, no legal fog thick enough to hide what they were. The lead detective stepped forward, identified himself, and told Michael and Jenna not to leave the room. Michael backed away, eyes racing over exits, over faces, over the dead screen that had just ended his life as he knew it. He still tried one last move. He looked at me and said, "You can stop this." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because even then, even there, after poisoning me, after murdering his mother, after forging paper and feeding me weakness by the cup, he still believed this was a negotiation between men. "It stopped being up to me," I told him, "the moment you listened to her beg and did nothing." He went pale. The detectives moved in fully then, not loudly, not theatrically. One took his arm, another secured Jenna. Their rights were read over a room full of wealthy witnesses who suddenly found the floor fascinating. Jenna sobbed almost immediately. Real tears at last, not for Evelyn, not for me, for herself. Michael never cried. He only stared at me, as if a door he had been sure of all his life had finally closed. He said one thing as they turned him. "You are supposed to be confused." I held his gaze. "You were supposed to be my son." I did not shout it. I did not need to. Something about quiet truth in a loud room lands harder than anger ever could. They took them out through the side corridor. No one stopped them. No one defended them. The same people who had been calling Michael admirable 40 minutes earlier now shifted away from the space he had occupied as if moral stain were contagious. After they were gone, I stood alone at the front with the microphone still warm in my hand. I looked out at the audience and said, "My wife died asking her family for help. If you leave here remembering only one thing, remember this: kindness without honesty is not goodness. Sometimes it is only disguise." Then I stepped away. The next weeks were not dramatic, they were procedural, and I am grateful for that. Real justice, when it comes, is often paperwork with teeth. The device recovery held. The audio forensic report supported it. My toxicology and blood work established repeated exposure. The forged or manipulated codicil unraveled under expert review. Bank records and the attempted shell transfer established financial motive and active fraud. Text messages recovered from Jenna's phone filled in what murderers always think is safe to write when they believe a victim is already fading. The messages were uglier than I expected. Not because of rage. Because of boredom. One message from Jenna read, "He's slower this week." Another from Michael, "Good, keep the doses small until the date." There was a spreadsheet too. I will never forget that. A spreadsheet tracking my appetite, sleep, confusion, and cooperation. My life had become a project dashboard. At the preliminary hearing, I saw Michael in person again. No suit this time. No ballroom lights. No audience to charm. He looked tired and thinner, but not repentant. That was the part that settled something final in me. He did not look sorry for what he had done. He looked angry that it had failed. Jenna pleaded early and tried to trade detail for mercy. Michael held out longer, thinking perhaps he could still distort the story. But the story had already learned to stand up on its own. Noah testified about the wipe attempts and recovery process. Helen testified about the compounds and exposure pattern. Eli, with visible satisfaction, dismantled the estate fraud piece down to its smallest hinge. When the transcript of Evelyn's final recording was read aloud, even the court clerk lost rhythm for a second. I never looked at Michael during that part. I looked straight ahead. A few people told me later I was strong. They were wrong. Strength is not what it feels like to hear your wife's dying words read in a courtroom. It feels like surviving them. About a month after the arrests, I returned to the repair shop to pick up Evelyn's glasses. Noah had replaced the lens, cleaned the frame, restored them as best he could. He handed them over in a small case. "I wasn't sure if you'd want them," he admitted. "I do," I said. "Why?" Because I had been thinking about that question for days. "Because they are not the thing that took her from me," I told him. "They are the thing that brought her back long enough to tell the truth." He nodded like that answer had helped him too. By early spring, treatment had done its work. The fog in my head lifted almost completely. My hands steadied. The deep ache in my legs eased. Food tasted normal again. Sleep became real sleep, not the drugged sinking I had mistaken for exhaustion. One morning I woke before dawn, went into the kitchen, made myself tea from a fresh box I had bought alone, and drank it at the table without fear. That small act almost undid me. Not because it was grand, because it was ordinary. Poison does not only attack the body, it attacks trust. It turns chairs, cups, rooms, and routines into questions. Healing, I learned, is not one big triumphant moment. It is the slow return of ordinary safety. A month later, I met with the Heart Care Foundation Evelyn had loved. We revised the estate fully. No 6-month trap, no ambiguity, no path back for greed. I expanded the gift. Part of the money went to cardiac support services for older women whose symptoms are too often dismissed. Another portion created a digital safety program for seniors living with memory decline, named in Evelyn's honor. That mattered to me, not because technology is noble. Technology is just a tool. But because the same feature meant to help my wife retrace forgotten steps, became the witness that retraced her final ones. When the dedication ceremony came, it was small and sincere. No chandeliers, no donors in polished shoes pretending empathy for networking. Points, just staff, a few doctors, a plaque, and me. The plaque read, Evelyn Belcare and Memory Center. I touched her name with 2 fingers. For the first time since her death, I felt something close to peace without rage standing next to it. If this story has stayed with you this far, share it now. Not for me, for the person who still thinks danger always arrives looking dangerous. People sometimes ask what the hardest part was. It was not the courtroom. It was not the video. It was not even the poisoned tea. It was the weeks after, when the house became quiet again, and there was no enemy left to outthink. Revenge, justice, exposure, survival, whatever word you choose, all of it creates motion. Motion can keep grief from landing. But eventually the doors close, the calls stop, the hearings end, and you are just a widower in a house full of after. I had to learn how to live there. At first I moved room to room like a visitor. The breakfast nook still held the cushion Evelyn liked because it supported her back. Her gardening gloves were still in the mudroom pocket where she always forgot them. In our bedroom, one drawer still carried hair clips and old receipts, and a dried mint she once tucked into a book because she said it smelled like summer. For a while I changed nothing. Then I changed small things. I threw out every tea Jenna had ever brought. I repainted the study. I replaced the dead fern with a white orchid, Evelyn's favorite. I moved the kitchen table 2 feet closer to the window because she always said morning light should never be wasted on empty floor. Slowly the house stopped feeling like a crime scene and started feeling like home again. Not the same home. That was gone, but a truthful one. I also had to reckon with memory of Michael before he became this man. That may be the part some people least understand. They assume that once truth is visible, love dies cleanly. It does not. I still remember teaching him to throw a ball in our backyard. I remember him asleep against my chest after a thunderstorm when he was 6. I remember his first school concert, when he sang too loud and off-key and Evelyn laughed so hard she cried. Those memories remain true. So does what he did. Adulthood, especially painful adulthood, is learning that one truth does not erase another. Michael had once been a little boy I adored. He also became a man who let his mother die for money and helped poison his father. Love cannot excuse that. Memory cannot fix it. Fatherhood cannot carry it away. So I stopped trying to reconcile the unreconcilable. I let the two truths stand. That was its own kind of freedom. The sentencing day came in late May. The courtroom was full but not crowded. No public spectacle, just the cold dignity of consequence. Jenna spoke first. She cried, said she had been afraid of Michael, said she made horrible choices. I believed only part of that. Fear may have played a role, but greed had too. The law noticed the difference. Michael declined to make a full statement. His lawyer spoke about pressure, financial collapse, distorted judgment, addiction, panic. All the words people use when they want a monster to sound merely unlucky. Then the judge asked if I wished to speak. I stood. I had written pages the night before and used none of them. Instead, I said this. My wife died asking for help from the two people standing closest to her. My son heard that plea and treated it as an obstacle. Then he and his wife spent months trying to make my death look natural. This was not one bad decision. It was a series of calm decisions repeated over time. I am not here to ask for mercy, and I am not here to ask for vengeance. I am here to ask the court to call this what it was, chosen cruelty. That was all. The judge did. The sentence was long. Long enough that no future Christmas, birthday, or appeal calendar will return them to the life they tried to buy with our deaths. Some people would call that tragic. I call it accurate. When I left the courthouse, reporters waited outside, but Eli shielded me from most of them. One young woman with a notebook asked, "Mr. Bell, do you forgive your son?" I do not know why that question follows every public pain. Maybe because people are more comfortable with healing when it performs for them. I looked at her and said, "Today is not about forgiveness. Today is about truth surviving." Then I kept walking. By summer, the garden needed work. Evelyn had always kept it better than I did. She talked to plants as if they needed encouragement. I knelt in the dirt more than my back preferred and learned the names of things I had once only admired from doorways. One afternoon, I found her old straw hat in the shed, faded ribbon, bent brim. I put it on and caught sight of myself in the window and laughed for the first time in a way that did not hurt. That mattered too. People think laughter after grief means you are leaving someone behind. Sometimes it means the opposite. Sometimes it means love has become safe enough to bring joy back with it. In August, the center in Evelyn's name officially opened its first family support room. They invited me to see it before the public launch. On one wall, there was a simple quote chosen from one of Evelyn's library newsletters. I had forgotten she wrote it years ago. It said, "Being cared for with dignity is not a luxury. It is a form of love." I stood there a long time. That sentence held her better than photographs did. Because it was exactly who she had been. A few months later, Noah visited for dinner. He looked older than he had before all this, but steadier. He told me he almost threw those glasses away the day he saw the wipe attempts because he feared he was stepping into someone else's war. Then he said something I still think about. "I kept wondering what would have happened if you never brought them in." I answered honestly, "I would probably be dead." Neither of us spoke for a moment after that. Then I added, And that is why tiny decisions matter. Because they do. A pair of glasses in a bag, a tech who paid attention, a plant dying in a hallway, a lawyer reading one clause closely, a doctor testing the thing other doctors were never asked to test. Most lives do not change only in giant moments. They change because someone notices the detail everyone else steps over. That was the lesson I spent a career teaching about accidents. It was also the lesson that saved my life. Now on quiet mornings I still sit in the kitchen with tea and the repaired glasses case beside me. I do not wear them. They are not mine, but I keep them near, not as a shrine to pain, as a reminder of what truth sometimes asks from us: attention, patience, the willingness to look again when the first explanation is too smooth. Some nights I still hear Evelyn's voice from the recording. Not the worst part, not the plea. I hear her humming at the start, that little absent-minded tune while she poured a glass of water, still living inside a normal evening, still believing she was safe among family. That sound used to destroy me. Now it does something else. It reminds me what I was fighting for all along. Not punishment, not money, not even victory. Her dignity, the truth of who she was. The refusal to let her final moments be rewritten by the people who betrayed her. And if you ask me whether justice healed me, I will tell you no. Justice is not healing. Justice is a boundary. It is the line that says, this harm happened and it will not be renamed. Healing is slower, quieter, and far less dramatic. Healing is learning to sit in your own house again without listening for danger. Healing is making tea without suspicion. Healing is allowing your wife's memory to return in colors other than black. That has taken longer, but it is happening. The strongest ending I can give you is not that I won, because this was never a game. And it is not that evil got punished, though it did. It is this. The people who wanted my wife reduced to an inheritance, and me reduced to a confused old man, failed. She became a name that now helps keep other families safe. I became the witness they thought they could outlast. And the glasses they tried to erase became the last pair of honest eyes in the room. So if something in your life feels wrong, if a story is being handed to you too neatly, if the people asking for your trust seem very interested in your weakness, look closer. Ask again. Read the paper twice. Taste the tea before you swallow. Love does not require blindness. In fact, real love may demand the courage to see clearly when seeing clearly breaks your heart. I still miss Evelyn every day. I miss her in the garden, in the kitchen, in the quiet before sleep. I miss the way she said my name when she wanted me to stop overthinking. I miss the hand on my sleeve. I miss the life we were still having. But I no longer carry the shame of failing her. Because when the truth finally reached me, I did not turn away. I listened. I followed it. And I finished the sentence she never got to finish. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment with one word: seen. Then like, subscribe, and share it with someone who trusts too easily, because sometimes the safest thing in the world is not innocence, it's attention.